Welcome back to another podcast episode where we help aspiring developers get jobs and junior developers grow. So I hear you loud and clear. A lot of people want to know more self-taught developer paths, and I'm excited to dive into it. I have a lot more episodes coming out for that, but for today, we're actually going to dive into freeCodeCamp. If you haven't heard of it, this is a really good episode to watch because I invited 3 guests on that went through freeCodeCamp, and I'm sure they have a lot to say about it. But as usual, we'll go ahead and start with the intros. Zach, how about you?
So I'm Zach Simonton. The industry that I'm coming from is I was originally a game artist. I went to Full Sail University, got my BS in game art, and came home. It was really hard to break into the game industry, and I almost made it into the game industry, but it just didn't work out. Working as basically a lead artist for a small game company. I got married. I tried making it as a 3D artist, and I switched career paths to basically become a software engineer. And so I'm currently in the interviewing process. I'm being interviewed right now by a small web dev firm up in New Hampshire where I currently live. And that's pretty much it right now.
Really cool. Well, good luck with the interview. I hope it goes well.
Thank you.
So for me, I'll keep mine short. I was an aquatics director. I have a psychology degree. I became an aquatics director, and then I became a software engineer. So I have a really quirky path. Yeah, how about you, Jonathan?
Hey, everyone. My name is Jonathan Lancaster, and I actually come from business, sales, marketing industry. So I'm a front-end developer, software engineer. That's what I've been focusing on. But I came from, sales, been doing sales for almost 10 years. I worked with a lot of companies doing business development. And I decided to, switch for something that it fits more in my personality, because I am the quiet type, and I'm very technical and analytical. I think a lot, and I don't like to talk to a lot of people, but working in sales, constantly, picking up the phone, making phone calls, calling people up, knocking on doors. So it kind of switched my personality a little bit, but that wasn't a good fit, right? And so I decided to switch for software engineer, and I've been loving it. Yeah.
Very cool. Where are you at now with the job app process?
Oh yeah, so I am interviewing with companies, and I'm job searching. And as far as my experience, I've been working a lot as a freelancer. So yeah, that's what I've been doing the most with most of my time. Freelancing, studying nonstop, and yeah.
Okay, very cool. Thanks. How about you, Elliot?
Yeah, I started out, I left college. I got a journalism degree. I double majored in French, and I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do. So I thought law school would be something good to try for. But I couldn't get in. I couldn't get into the school I wanted to get into, but I thought, okay, I'll work in some law firms, and I'll work as a paralegal. So I did that, and I thought I would end up going to law school, but I ended up turning that into like a half of my career. I worked in law firms for like 7 years. I got burnt out, and but while I was there, I learned how to code. I learned how to use Python, VBA scripts with Excel. And so I had gotten a whole lot of experience with MySQL and all these things that I didn't even know, until the first line of code that I wrote, and it did something. I just didn't know what I was missing. And then I realized that this is so magical. I need to know more. And that was like 6 years ago now. I since left the legal field to be a teacher for a short stint, but I really just leveraged that to become a developer. And that's what I'm doing now. I have my own company called DevSouth Consulting, and I lead a group. We are developing some apps for some startups. But I leverage that into what I do now, and I'm a front-end software engineer at Lowe's now.
Okay, really cool. So you mentioned you had dabbled into code while you had that law position. Was that on the side, or was that actually for your job?
Yeah, there was problems at work. We had massive amounts of cases and like waves of 100 cases at a time for a corporate entity. And so people were organizing files in the directories by hand. And I hacked a way to do that with code so that I didn't have to do it. Using some spreadsheets and a VBA script, and 100 folders would be created with like 10 subfolders, and I didn't have to do it. I just clicked a button, and in 5 seconds it was done.
Okay. All right. Smart. Very smart. Okay. So I got a feel for most of you, which is pretty cool, and we'll get to know each other a little bit more. But, like I told you before the episode, I'm winging this one. I don't know a whole lot about freeCodeCamp, and everyone talks about it. I've used it a little bit when I was actually trying to become a developer, but that was like 5 years ago. And it seems like some of you have had more recent experience with it. So we're going to dive into it. So, anyone feel free to respond to this, but what is freeCodeCamp? What do they have to offer us?
They have to offer a lot, to be quite honest. When I was getting into my coding journey, I really didn't know where to start. And I found freeCodeCamp through a Tumblr post. And I just kind of started from there. And they have like different tracks that you can go on, kind of like with Code Academy. But like we've all said before, it's all free. So you can do like different certifications with them. And through that, you can go through like different, different tracks. Like currently right now, I finished a front-end library certification. And then I'm working on a web design certification. And then they also have like a ton of videos that you can use. Like they have like intro to Python, intermediate Python, or like basically anything that you want to learn, they have it for free. They even have like a whole video, like I think it's like a 10-hour or 5-hour course on like MERN stack. Like they have a whole course on that, which is like super beneficial. And like currently I'm also doing, along with my responsive web design certification, a course on PHP, because my current interview that I have set up requires me to learn, or requires me to know PHP for plugins. So
interesting.
That's, in my experience, it pretty much like has almost any track you want to go on.
Yeah, I agree with Zach. If you are starting out, from the beginning, nothing about code, like that's might be the best free resource. And that was actually my first learning resource, that I've had, was freeCodeCamp. And, once I went through, a few, couple certifications from there, I started using YouTube. But that was the beginning of all. And just gives you a more clear picture of, what is web development and different technologies, because you learn. They have different categories, like the certification. So you start with web design, learn HTML, CSS, and it's very detailed. So it's really good. It's really good. And then they go into JavaScript, algorithms and data structures, and that's a different certification. And it goes on and on with libraries. And I think they focus mostly on the front end up until last year. And last year they started adding new certifications like Python. They didn't have it there. Now they have it, and a few other stuff. So It's really good.
It's interesting that they focus on front end, and now they're starting to bring back end into it. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they also. Sorry, continue, Jonathan.
Oh no! Really quickly, they have some back end stuff. Like they teach you how to use MongoDB, Node.js, but those are the only things that they have for the back end up until last year.
Yeah, and they also, I think they also have a QA certification that you can do.
Yeah, that's right.
And they also have like legacy certifications that you can access. That like you can obtain them by doing like different projects that are in different certifications that you can get through freeCodeCamp, but they're not like their own track anymore. They're kind of like they're being phased out.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
and I want to say, if I can add one thing, I love that freeCodeCamp is project based. Like, if you know, a lot of people don't realize this, but if you know how to code enough, you don't even have to do the challenges. You can just go straight to the projects and complete the projects, get the certificates. And if you need to go back to the challenges, that's where I would say, but if you're a total noob, you could start with the challenges, no problem. Start with the challenges if you don't know anything. But if you already know how to code a little bit, even some of the stuff is like learn React. You could actually do the challenges. You could complete them in Vue or Angular or any other framework of your choice with JavaScript. You could complete the challenge on some of the front end libraries, even some of the back end. You could use Rails, you could use Node, whatever if you know that and you can build the project, and it passes the test, you can get the certificate by completing just the 5 for each certificate.
okay. So you mentioned that it's heavily project-based. You don't even need to do the challenges, so that's good to know. With the projects, how much autonomy do you have over those projects? Is it like a project-based tutorial where like they're kind of giving you steps to build out, or like what would be an example of like something they give you for an idea of a project? And like, I'm wondering how general or vague it is.
They give you a user story, which is really good. So they go step by step with, let's say for the JavaScript, that one of the projects is for you to build a calculator. Or, for example, a calculator, right? So they go step by step, telling you, describing what you have to code or build. It almost reminds me of let's say React, right? You work with components. So those user stories are basically you building different components, and then at the end you put it together, and that's the project. So it's very, they guide you through the whole, every single step.
Yeah, it's basically TDD, like it's test driven. So
Yeah.
you need to pass the test.
That
they're asking you to pass. It can be like, most of them are like 10 to maybe 16, 17 at max, I think. But
I don't know. I mean, in the front end ones, at least in the front end certification or the front end libraries one, I think it was like the max was about like 10.
Yeah, most of them it's less than 15 for most of them.
Yeah.
Closer to 10 for most of them.
And you have like so much freedom for like what you can do with like language wise for like any of the projects. Like you don't have to use React, but it's like heavily encouraged. Also, like you don't have like for the CSS portion, you don't have to use Bootstrap, but heavily encouraged. So you got a lot of freedom when it comes to these projects.
Okay. I'm just processing. Okay. So I know what I want to say. It wouldn't be my podcast if I didn't challenge this, just like I challenge everything that we review. So I love that they basically write out a bunch of tests. I love the freedom of you using your own frameworks and your own stack. That's good. It's similar to my experience at my coding bootcamp. And I found that really helpful. Now, it sounds like they do give you a lot of guidance. And one of the things that a lot of employers care about is how do you take this idea, this concept, and turn it into a technical solution? So meaning you write up the user stories, you write up the technical requirements, and it sounds like they do that for you. So if these are the projects that you have to showcase on your portfolio, I think you should showcase them from what you're telling me, but I do think they're going to bring a lot weaker value. I think, so let me know if you disagree with this. I feel like you need to definitely branch out of freeCodeCamp and build your own projects. Think about your own problems that you want to solve and just like break away from freeCodeCamp to be more prepared for a professional developer position.
No, I'd agree with that.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah, like after I got my front end library certification with freeCodeCamp, I wanted to do different projects that were not like hosted by freeCodeCamp. I wanted to build my own things. At one point I was working on a MERN stack project, but unfortunately I had to stop just because the guy that was, showing me how to build a bug tracker just like stopped. Like he just stopped like doing the tutorial. And like I tried to reach out to him and like say like how can I finish this, and so I had to do a lot of troubleshooting myself, and eventually I figured it out. But like by the time I figured it out, it was like a little bit too late to like keep that project up, so I had to start a whole new one and decided to just like learn Node.js so that like I could keep all that MERN stuff fresh in my mind.
Okay. In my opinion, I don't think you have to rely on any of these bootcamp. Like you don't learn enough for you to actually become start creating projects on your own. Like it takes time. Like I'm still learning. I've completed some of the certifications from freeCodeCamp and also Code Academy, and a ton of courses on Udemy, YouTube. So I'm at a point that I'm able to build projects on my own, right? But from, when you're starting off, these code camps, they give you an idea of, how to, how programming works, how coding works. But it takes time for you to actually start learning and understanding the fundamentals and algorithms, and breaking things down into pieces so it can put together, a whole program or something like that. So yeah, I don't think just freeCodeCamp will get you to become a developer, but I think it's a perfect start. It's a perfect start.
It really is. Like, yeah. I'm sorry, Elliot. You always look like you have something to say. I don't mean to like talk over you, but
yeah, I would just say, even just the people that teach for freeCodeCamp, super accessible. Even Quincy Larson himself, if you attend conferences or like you're even like you can contribute to freeCodeCamp. That would be another way to increase your skills. I've actually talked with them about doing that. And before my job search got like really like where I was getting an interview almost every day, I was really thinking about getting more involved in that. And I may still, I've gotten, to a place where I may have some free time, but I may not because I still do my startup work. But yeah, I would say, it's more about the people that are teaching, really, because they're so accessible. They'll help you. They'll, you can tweet something like, "Hey, like, thank you for making this course," and they'll like DM with you and like, get to know you. The majority of them will. So, that's what I would say. Just leverage the people skills that you have. Like, leverage that with some of these people that are teaching. And I pretty much approach people like that on Twitter. And I never asked them to be my mentor. I just started sparking up a conversation with them, and pretty much de facto, they became my mentors. So Quincy Larson's one of those. Several of the people that taught freeCodeCamp courses, they were those people for me.
That's really cool.
Real quick, before we, because there's a lot that you're saying, I want to respond to Jonathan, and then I actually want to say something about what you're saying, Elliot. So I want to understand correctly, because you mentioned that freeCodeCamp is something that you would have to expand on, but you also made the statement that you couldn't really become a developer just based on a coding boot coding boot camps in general, and you used the word coding boot camps. So my question to you is, are you like from the perspective where no coding boot camp can prepare you for a developer position?
Oh no, absolutely not. Yeah, you can become a developer, but meaning you can become a junior developer, but for you to get to a level that you start building things, you really grasp on, the fundamentals. It takes more than just the bootcamp, because the bootcamp is really quickly, like it's just too much information. You can't retain that much information. So it takes time, after the bootcamp, for you to start, understanding, or at least for me, that's how it's been working. I complete all these courses, classes and, these free resources on the internet, but still, I always go back, I always go back to, to pick up on things that I haven't used too much of it, so it's not ingrained in my mind, in my brain. But you can absolutely become a developer with boot camps, right? But as far as the skill level, I guess, and how good you become, it takes time.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. So I would agree, like, there's not a single coding boot camp, no matter what they offer. And I know some coding boot camps offer, you're not going to become a mid-level developer from any coding boot camp in that short period. It's, you're at a junior level. And, but yeah, I think you just also brought up a good point is a lot of people will be so frustrated with themselves because they feel like they chose the wrong program because they don't retain it as well as they think they do. And they're like, a lot of people, I don't think they do a very good job at gauging their improvement. And a lot of people get frustrated with themselves. And so I think
really frustrating, especially in the beginning.
And I did too. But I think it's helpful to realize that it takes time for this knowledge to sink in and for you to be exposed to a slightly similar problem that helps reinforce what you learned 3 months ago. So I think you brought up a good point. But yeah, and I just want to say one thing that you mentioned, Elliot. Quincy seems like a kind person. I saw him on Twitter. I actually, when I was live streaming on Twitch, he put me in his like auto host list, and then he dropped me. I have no idea why. Probably because I was inactive. I don't care. But like it was a kind gesture for him to actually like put me there because I know he has a big program and he was starting to do live streams. I don't think he does them anymore. But I don't know Quincy very much, but good for him and his instructors for staying connected with people. But Zach, I know.
One thing I want to say about Quincy, like they're always sending emails. Like I think they send out emails every day with a lot of material. So that's something that's really, really cool from freeCodeCamp. Little projects that you can build and new things that you can learn. So it's not just the freeCodeCamp platform, but also the emails. The emails are really engaging. They're not just trying to. It's not like newsletter email, but they're actually sending you useful information. If you want to learn more. So it's really cool.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I've gotten to know Quincy. He's really, I don't know, just been a huge inspiration for me. And I think another aspect of getting to know the people of freeCodeCamp is they have a podcast, right? So the podcast, they interview people, and it's kind of similar to like Code Newbie, or maybe there's a whole slew of them where they interview people who are trying to break into the industry. And so you just get like role model after role model, somebody who was, in sales like Jonathan, or somebody who was coming from gaming like Zach. Someone like me who was, maybe in the legal industry or business or, a teacher, whatever, like your industry, coming from, being an instructor, a director, directing things. It's like totally different non-coding field. But then all of these people on the podcast that came, similar to how you're interviewing people on podcasts, that's what they do through the freeCodeCamp podcast as well. I leverage that to like, hey, like, I want to get to know you. Like, and so I reach out to several people. And like I was saying, like those people, they pretty much were my mentors. I never asked them to be, but just the people that kept giving me advice or I asked them questions, they responded, I consider them my mentor.
Okay. How about you, Zach? I know you've been wanting to say something.
No, well, I find that freeCodeCamp is probably like, I don't know what else to say about it except for the fact that it's just super accessible. They really helped me. I like quarantine being like, has really helped like really solidify like my career path and what I want to be. And like wanting to have like a career that I can be proud of. And freeCodeCamp has really helped me with that. Even though like, I think probably my only critique is that like, I'm not really a big fan of all the micro lessons that they have. Like when you do like when you're going through like a certification, I feel like some of those things could be shortened a little bit, or they could be compounded into one big lesson. Or like some of those, especially like when you're doing responsive web design, that might be because I did a little bit backwards and I did the front end library certification first, and now I'm doing the responsive web design one second. But I think some of those things could be like compounded into larger lessons than like into smaller bite-sized lessons. That's just probably like my own critique.
Yeah, I think that's good feedback. Real quick, I forgot to ask this. Let's go one by one. We'll start with you, Zach. What tracks did you go down? What certifications did you get?
So I've said it before. I have the front end library certification. I'm working on the responsive web design one as well. I've done a couple of courses on YouTube with freeCodeCamp where they have like learn Python in like 5 hours or learn PHP in 5 hours, which is what I've done. Obviously I haven't, sat in front of a computer for 5 hours. I, broke up my time, but I've done those. I'm going to be, after my responsive web design one, I'm going to be working on the JavaScript and JavaScript in algorithms one, just because I want to better my JavaScript skills and hopefully in the long term try to do the front end. Well, not the front end, the full stack, get the full stack certification with them.
Okay. How about you, Jonathan?
I did. So I started with the responsive web design. So I got that one. I got the front end libraries. I completed the JavaScript data structure and algorithms. I have it in front of me. Data visualization and the API microservices certification. The APIs is the basic Node and Express, the MongoDB, and the managing packages with NPM.
I'm not a huge fan of that. So do they have I don't know if you said it, do they have like a relational database one, like Postgres or MySQL or anything like that?
No, just MongoDB. That's the only. Yeah, from what I know and from what I've completed was the no relational.
Okay, I'm just going to make a comment and then I want to hear what you did, Elliot. But I'm not a fan of teaching junior level developers, like beginning developers, when they're diving into the back end, non-relational databases. I think it's so easy to like come up with really, really bad conventions with non-relational databases, and relational databases forces you to see relationships between data, and you really have to think about it. For anyone I would actually like pause that section of freeCodeCamp and just like look up a relational database and pick that up first before you go into Mongo. That's my personal opinion, but that's interesting.
That's a good feedback or suggestion. Because I've always been focusing since the beginning. I've been focusing on learning and using MongoDB for projects that I've worked with. I don't know if it's just because it's easier to integrate with it goes easier to integrate with Node.js, JavaScript. But I haven't used MySQL or relational database, so I don't know.
If you're going to be a backend developer. So, Okay, I'll expand on this just a little bit. In startups, I think too many startups will bring in a non-relational database because they haven't spent enough time figuring out what their data is going to look like. And like Mongo allows you to be adaptable, and it allows your startup to, like, as your customers' needs change, as you grow, it allows your database to not have to completely restructure itself to be able to hold and manipulate and use that data. I actually used Mongo and Postgres in the same project because I was bringing in different pieces of data. And I think it's important to understand the advantages of what Mongo brings versus like a relational database. And if you are going to learn Mongo, at least spend the extra time into learning why Mongo is the right choice for what you're doing. If you can argue that, then that's a good conversation to have with an employer. But if you are just like, I learned Mongo because FreeCodeCamp taught me Mongo, that's not a good reason, right? So maybe the advice is just think about why you're using that database. But I'm glad you brought that up. How about you, Elliot?
So you're talking about that certs. I rushed through the responsive web design in like a month. And then I camped out in that JavaScript one for a long time. And I actually even started the front end at almost like simultaneous. I was doing them together. And then, I went and I dabbled some in the data viz, and I think I stopped at data viz. But then I circled back and I said, well, do I have any projects I can show? Because it really doesn't matter if you do these certs if you don't have projects that you can show employers. So I would say don't focus on getting the cert. Focus on learning the concepts so that you can get a job. You can show people the projects. So that's what I did. I went back and I actually was doing like coding interviews. I was getting take-home assignments. And so I said, okay, I didn't get this job, but let me take this take-home and do one of the front-end, responsive web design, projects. Let me redo it. I did like a product landing page. I made it look really good. I put some JavaScript in there, which I didn't have to do. I went up and beyond. I made it look amazing, just like the mock-up they gave me. And that's still, to this day, I have an Acme Widget Company product landing page from FreeCodeCamp on my resume. I think 3 of the things that I have on my resume are from FreeCodeCamp. And then another one is the startup company that I helped kind of birth. And then another one, I just say, like, make that your focus. Nobody really cares about the certificate, honestly. I actually got 2 of them, but it's really not so much about that. It's more about learning the skills. And you did mention Mongo. I haven't really dove into Mongo really, and I've done a lot of the FreeCodeCamp stuff. I've only used MySQL, and they actually do have a YouTube video of like multiple hours of MySQL, so you can geek out on whatever. They got it. Like if you want to learn it, they got it on FreeCodeCamp. I guarantee you.
Yeah, like I said before, it's one of the biggest benefits of like a FreeCodeCamp. It's whatever you want to learn, your heart's desire is on like their YouTube channel. I'd probably would argue, just like to go off with what Elliot said, if you don't want to focus on the certs and you want to focus on like learning and like understanding the concepts, go straight to the YouTube channel and like just delve into like the basics of JavaScript, the basics of HTML, like whatever, like they got it. Like I'm serious, they got it.
Yeah. And here's a good point I want to bring it up is you don't need to get the certs from FreeCodeCamp or that doesn't matter much, but one thing that's good to emphasize, you do need to have projects, so those certs, they kind of force you to build your own projects, so by getting the certification, you automatically, building, some minor projects from FreeCodeCamp that you can show employers or whatnot. So I think that the projects are important, but the certs you don't need that. As long as you're learning, as long as knowing and learning everything.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So in terms of certifications, I completely agree. I'm glad that you emphasize projects. I think everyone here has a really healthy perspective on growing as a developer with that. Now, I used to hold this stance. So first of all, I don't know how many people I told that their certification is worthless. Like when we're diving into an hour-long conversation, and then I don't just say, "Oh, what you just did was worthless." I word it much differently. But I think an important thing to realize for people, because I know a lot of people bash people that post their certification on LinkedIn. And one thing that I learned is gamification and the reward from that it's real. And that's kind of what makes freeCodeCamp maybe addictive is a strong word, but it keeps you moving. It keeps you motivated, right?
Yes,
and so I think that learning platform needs that gamification to be successful. And so if someone posts a free certification, just kind of don't do what I used to do and tell them that, that certification doesn't matter. Just realize some people just like to solidify what they just accomplished, and it makes them feel good. But ultimately, once you do that, great. Now start working on projects. Now start using that knowledge to apply it to actual projects.
I agree with that. You know what? That brings up, I completely agree with, getting the certification actually makes you feel good, because it's an accomplishment. So even though it's not that important, what's important is if you actually learn. But the process, getting the reward at the end, it feels really good. It's something solidifies what you went through and what you learned. Yeah. So I do like to try to get certifications for that reason, for that purpose, the reward. I think it feels, it helps you, it motivates you.
To piggyback off of that, off of what you're saying, I went to a 4-year college to get a degree in game art. Even during that process and after that process, I found out that you don't really need a 4-year degree to learn 3D modeling or how to be a concept artist or how to do 2D animation. And you could say my 4-year degree is worthless. And personally, I kind of think it is, even though I'm not trying to dump on my alma mater. But it's the time and the effort that you put into things. I know people on Twitter, I have friends on Twitter and in real life that are fantastic artists and didn't go to a 4-year program. And I kind of wish I didn't do that. And in fact, I'm mentoring a kid that we're friends with their family, and being a digital artist and being a better artist. And but it's the same with freeCodeCamp. Your certification isn't worthless. It means something to you. But the time and effort, it just represents the time and effort that you put in, and the projects that come out of that are the fruit of those labors. You necessarily can't have one without the other. Doing the course to get that certification built up that curiosity and that need to want to be a better developer.
Did you learn, how to use Blender? Do you use Blender?
Yeah, so I actually taught myself Blender.
Really?
Yeah.
I used to play with it when I was a teenager.
It's actually it's almost becoming the industry standard because it's now it's fantastic. It's you can now do 2D animation in Blender. And
back in the days, the industry standard was Maya, I think.
Maya is still the industry standard, but I'm sorry, we're going off on a tangent, Don, but it still is, but it's only because it's owned by Autodesk and because it has that clout. So and funnily enough, to relate it to programming, my first programming language was Python. When I was in college, they taught us how to program in Python. and to make scripts for Maya and it actually works with, I think Blender's open source. I believe they use Python for all their scripts.
Yeah, they do.
So like,
I was working on a project a week or a couple weeks ago that I actually needed to learn some stuff for Blender, like adding texture to a model, and so I could display or render the model on the browser. So I actually learned 3JS for this project, and I had to learn some stuff for Blender too. So yeah, it reminded me of my teens.
And like I said, we go off on tangents. This is not an organized podcast. So, but I like these tangents. But I do, just kind of to be conscientious of your time, though. I kind of just want to sum a lot up. Actually, I don't want to sum it up. What I want to say is I think we've gone over quite a bit with freeCodeCamp and giving like realistic expectations of what it gives you and what you need to supplement. Now, to be honest, this kind of sounds like a sales pitch. So like I said, it wouldn't be my podcast if we didn't challenge this a bit. So what could they improve at freeCodeCamp? What did they have that was lacking?
Oh, no, you go first, John.
Oh, thanks. So one of the things that I've been noticing is that their information are a little outdated. So that's one thing that I would suggest them to improve. So for example, the libraries, right? The front end libraries. I went through the React course, and it just feels like, in comparison to other courses, tutorials, materials that I use, to learn, they're a little behind. So I would say, maybe a little outdated.
Okay.
Oh no, Elliot, you go. You haven't talked much.
No, I would just echo that. I mean, they're still teaching like jQuery. I want to say, trying to remember. It's been a while since I looked at it, but yeah, I mean, they do more of the class-based React. And that's where I would say I supplemented a lot of my React learning with a course called Full Stack Open. And you may want to look into that one, Don, for a next free open source.
Full Stack Open?
Full Stack Open. I started using that because they teach, they took a radical step. Like, I think maybe like it was late 2019, they made this course, I think. And hooks was really new, but they took the radical step of saying like, we're not even going to teach you class-based. We're just going to go straight into hooks. And so I followed that through. I built several projects from that, put them on my portfolio. And I still lead a study group of people when we go through that. But yeah, I mean, that's where I would say, I think the one thing that helped me the best was finding community. And I did that through Twitter. I did the 100 Days of Code. I even used freeCodeCamp because there was a study group in my area and nobody was leading it. I stepped up and said, "Hey, is anybody leading this? If you're not, I'm gonna start meeting, and let's get people together and let's meet, in my city." And so I would say, find community. I even just started. I moderated a Discord channel, and we were meeting I think it was every day at a specific time. We would have Scrum and we would meet. So I'd say supplement what you're learning by whatever helps you learn the best. For me, that was being with people, whether it was digitally or in person, you need that aspect. And this was something that Quincy Larson said, and it's just impressed upon me for the rest of my life. But if you are a developer or aspiring to be a developer, I would say do these three things. You can't do one at the disservice of the others. You have to, one, always be improving your skills. First and foremost, always improving your skills. Two, you are always improving your reputation in the developer community. And then 3, you're networking your face off. If you're doing just one of those, it's like a three-legged stool. If you take one of those out, your stool is going to fall. So you need to always be not just siloing and like, okay, I'm learning. You need to get out of your learning, go meet somebody, ask them about it, let them know that you're interested in getting a career at this. Because I did not get to where I am alone. I had so many people, like I was saying, mentors. Get some people that will mentor you. Don't ask them to be your mentor. Just say, hey, I want to learn this. And the people that respond, those are the people that are your mentor. I can't say that enough. You have to get out of just like head down learning all the time. You need to actually, have groups, have user groups, meetup groups. Especially now, it's like the boom of virtual meetups and virtual podcasts like this. Like, there's so many out there. I mean, you could go to a meetup that's in the Valley, or a meetup that's in LA, or like, a meetup in Seattle. You could go to that and be a part of that and learn JavaScript, learn Python, whatever you want to learn. There's probably a virtual meetup doing that for free today, and you could be a part of it. So I don't know. I just say that to encourage somebody to listen to this. Don't do the disservice of just focusing on one area of your growth. Try to focus on all aspects like that. And freeCodeCamp will help you with the content, but you need to branch out and do the other things too, and that will get you much further.
Cool. Really good advice, Elliot. Thank you. I definitely like that idea of like the three-legged stool. And a lot of people do tend to get very narrow vision in what they feel that they need to improve, and they neglect other areas. I like that. Zach, you were going to mention something real quick?
Oh yeah, it's nothing big. Like I've said it before in the podcast, but I think like my biggest critique is that like freeCodeCamp, and to also borrow from Jonathan, it really does need to update some of the material in their certification courses. I think that they would be better not to have all the course material written out. I kind of prefer audio, like listening to what someone has to say, or watch, or visual, like seeing, like, not seeing something done, but like saying, here's the problem, and like, here's what we're going to do to fix it. Now you do this. We're not going to, show you how to do it. You got to do it. That's just how I learn. It's harder for me to read as well. I have dyslexia. So like I have to be slower when I read, and I kind of hate that. I just want to like, be able to hear the information, or I guess absorb the information and then like put it into practice.
And that, that's a really good point, because one feel I got from freeCodeCamp is they hold your hand a lot. And that is just something to be aware of, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of like to learn by trial and error.
Yeah.
So
I do agree that they have so much content. Like when you're going through the classes or the individual class, there's just so much to read. So much to read. Yeah.
So I would also add, I feel like, if you're in a boot camp and you're paying money for it, you're going to show up, you don't want to lose money. So yeah, that aspect of it being free, that it's optional, it's self-paced, it takes a really gritty and determined person to continue with freeCodeCamp. And that's what I see in Jonathan and Zach, is that these guys are persistent. You're not going to become a developer by spending, even if you spend big chunks, like you spend 5 hours, 10 hours, but you only do that once a month, you're not going to become a developer.
Yeah, I don't think that will ever happen to you.
Yeah, you need to be consistent. Like, if you really want it, you'll go like 3-4 hours a day until you get a job, or at minimum daily, like an hour to 2 hours daily. Like, you need to be consistent in your learning, and that's just not the structure of freeCodeCamp. You need to have that drive within you or you're just not going to make it through the content. That's just flat out. But if you're in a boot camp and you have to go to it, or you got to check in, there's probably the more likelihood that you're going to be more consistent than the average person doing FreeCodeCamp would be. So that's just another aspect of it.
Well, yeah, you just mentioned something with coding boot camps in general, that like the reason why so many people graduate and then struggle and fall off that bus afterwards is because they depended on that structure. They depended on other people telling them that they need to do this. So, not just for FreeCodeCamp, even coding boot camps, you know who you are, when you fall off the wagon a little bit, and you gotta stay consistent after that.
I agree with that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what Elliot said. Like you got to do it. You really have to do it like on your own. So I mean, and that's my wife. She's a nurse, and she like tried doing online classes once, and she hates it. Like, well, not once. She has to do a couple of like online like courses for getting credits and stuff, but like she hates it. She doesn't like it, and whereas like I can just like plop myself down and like just learn for like an hour or two, and then like go do other things because I gotta stay sane somehow.
Yeah, it's tough, man. For example, I started learning these things with one of my cousins, and I had two other friends we started at the same time. All of them gave up. It's very hard to keep the consistency, and especially in the beginning, man, it's so hard in the beginning, especially if being a self-taught, because you have to guide yourself, so, and most people, they lean towards paid education because they have that guidance, so I think that's the difference one of the big differences between paid and free is free. You on your own, right? So there's no one, like, you have to find the people, you have to find the resources, you have to find or build a system for you to learn, and you kind of learn how to handle yourself. It's and that skill goes a long way with developing, because man, if I sit here and I try to figure something out, I don't give up, and I do figure it out. So that's the mindset of a self-taught have for figuring things out.
Yeah, I've had to have my wife pull me away from the computer and force me to have like something to eat or drink, like, and take a break, or else I just like would just crash and burn. She's like, especially when I did like an Android and Java course with like another group, I just get so frustrated with like some of the projects that I had to do that I had to like step away and take a break. And then at night I'd be thinking of the solution, and then I'd wake up in the morning and I'd try it. I'd be like, and the problem solved. So yeah, you need a lot of like drive to do something like this.
Yeah, I agree. I think, Jonathan, you really highlighted the right mindset to have as a self-taught developer. I'm sure Zach, Jonathan, Elliot, all of you have shared, like our consistency and our like desire to like finish this and like get to the solution. And I think a lot of that kind of like, whether you want to call it healthy or unhealthy drive, like a lot of that pushes us through something like this. But this is really good. I think we're at a point right now. What I'd like to do is, with this section of the podcast, like, what's one final piece of advice we can give for aspiring developers? And we've been giving it throughout the entire podcast, but if you had to like sum your 1 point up, what would it be?
Just don't give up. Like, keep going. Like, it's going to be really, really tough in the beginning, but like once you get through it, like, it'll just click. Like, so just be consistent. Don't give up. Troubleshoot the answer. Ask for help if you need it, and you'll get to where you want to be.
I like it.
I agree with that. I'm not sure because the more I'm getting into it, the advice that I'll give myself changes. Before was you have to be persistent too. I think focus on the fundamentals. Yeah, because in the beginning I was learning HTML, CSS. That went pretty quickly. Like in a week, I went through the HTML part of freeCodeCamp, and then another week I went through CSS, and I finished the responsive web design. I think in 2 weeks, or maybe. And right off the bat, I started doing freelance with the skills that I had. And then I try to dive into JavaScript. And that's the point that you really have to focus on the fundamentals. So for a long time, I was neglecting, learning, understanding those core fundamentals of JavaScript, HTML, CSS. I was learning to do the projects. But, eventually I started putting more emphasis on the fundamentals, and I got so much better. Like things started clicking faster, and I've been able to build things with better code, and it's just been improving a lot faster with, focusing on actually learning, understanding. I think, along with what Zach said, persistent, and make sure you learn the fundamentals, because that's the key thing to programming.
I love it.
I would say, I had my thought, and I was listening to you guys. You guys are so good.
I can say mine if you want.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll have to catch my thought here.
Okay, sure. I do that all the time, by the way. So for me, and it really, like, I'm probably going to echo more of what Zach said. Jonathan, I loved your idea, but one thing I noticed in my meetup, because I host a mentorship meetup where aspiring developers just come in, and it was so fun to do this in person, and damn it, COVID. Anyways, but I'm going to be hosting it once, we're kind of in the clear with this. But a lot of people that come in, and it's sad to say, I would almost say like 85-90% of people that come in that are struggling to become a developer, they're never going to become a professional developer. And it's not because they're not intelligent enough. It's not because they're not capable of it. And it's not even because they chose the wrong path, because there's like free resources you could supplement all the time. There are just so many different paths. If one doesn't work out, you go to the next one. And we even talked about this idea in a previous podcast episode. Sometimes it takes the 5th YouTube video explaining what a promise is in JavaScript to finally get it to click, And so sometimes you have to supplement that content in order for things to register, and that's okay. But the reason why people aren't going to become developers is because they give up. Like there is not a single thing, because I have a bunch of mentors that help me with that. It's not a single thing we can do if they aren't putting in the work into building strong, healthy habits for themselves to get them to continue pushing forward. And a lot of conversations that I have with aspiring developers coming in, it starts with, okay, really struggling with this bug. And then I notice they're not handling this emotionally so well. And it's like, I wonder how they handle this at home. And then it becomes like, the conversation turns into like their habits, like what starts triggering this mental state in you, because this is not something that's going to help you overcome this. When you've experienced it like 100 times, you're going to get burned out. And so I think a lot of developers need to focus on good, healthy habits, getting sleep the same time every night, good hydration, good diet, good exercise, meditation. I highly encourage people to meditate. But like, I think aspiring developers neglect that way too often, and they blame it on like whatever path they were going down as a developer, when in reality, it's their habits that they need to work on and to continue pushing forward. That's my perspective from what I've seen.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I'd say, other than the things I already mentioned, because I tell people the Quincy Larson quote all the time. I tell people, you need to if you really want this, you need to be spending closer to 3 to 4 hours a day on this. Even if you have a day job, you need to be putting in the time, because it's going to take time. And it's not going to, like, I think a lot of, like, and I felt this way too. I watch a YouTube video, so-and-so said, oh, I studied CSS, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for 3 months, and then I got a job. That may happen for you, but that is so rare. It took me about 2 years of consistent work before I got my full-time role at Lowe's. So it could take some time, and especially in COVID, it could take some time. So be patient. The other thing I would say is you need to have a role model or two, like I was saying, mentors, role models, people that you see yourself in what they're doing because they've been in your shoes. You need these people, like you need those contacts, whether there's somebody on Twitter, somebody that you met at a meetup, somebody, maybe it's your church or wherever you regularly go, the gym or whatever, somebody so-and-so in your family, they are a programmer. Talk to those people, ask them questions, ask them how they became a developer. Like, just get to know them on a personal level. Like, what do you have in common with them? And then you start to see, man, if Nader David did it, I can do it. If JC Hyatt did it, I can do it. And I just have all these people down the line that inspire me. Maybe people that are not even like me, like Angie Jones. I know her on Twitter. She was like super pumped when I got my job. Like, all these people, you need to like have a network of people that they're your role model. The other thing I'd say is you got to get in the code editor. You cannot just like read, and don't build squat. You got to build something. You can't just become a developer and not know how to do it yourself. It's not like most subjects where you can just read the content and about it. I think that's where university, I have a friend, he's a developer, but he's actually going back to get his degree. And he was like, come take this test with me. And we just like laugh at it, like, haha, like they're just like testing it. Like that's how you learn development. You really don't. You actually need to go build something. You need to get in the editor, and I'd say if they build a cat app, you go build a dog app, like take the thing that they're building and build it just a little bit differently, like don't build the same thing, add some little nuance that's yours. And you say, hey, I saw this and I did it myself. But the other thing is get ready to fail a lot and fail forward. Like try to fail, like try, you will fail. Get back up, try, fail, repeat. I mean, I failed a lot. I can't tell you how many coding interviews I failed. I applied for like over 500 jobs and I only got one. So you will fail a lot. And you may apply for 50 jobs and get a role. I mean, great, but be ready to fail. Like you're going to fail, but every time you fail, learn something from it, get better. Like I said, like I failed interviews. I took those exercises, I turned them into my portfolio pieces. And I actually have 2 of them in my portfolio right now. It's a trivia game and that Acme widget company. It's like an Acme Anvil company. And 2 of those are they're like linchpins in my resume now. And they're never going anywhere, at least, for me, because I put my heart and soul in them, even though I failed them. So just get ready to fail. And don't see it as like, hey, I'm stupid. See it as, I'm just not there yet. But it's up to you to get there. Kind of like you were saying, Don, like the people that quit are the people that don't get there. And it's just, you just have to have that persistence. And I think that's what the commonality in all of us are saying is that it's not just going to happen. You got to go make it happen.
I think it's a persistence and patience game. It's a patience and persistent game.
Yeah. You got to be willing to play the long game if you want to be a developer.
Yeah.
And to build off what you were saying, Elliot, about like the Acme Anvil landing page. I really wanted it when I was doing the front end libraries program. I really wanted to make the drum kit like a Hank Hill soundboard. but I knew it wouldn't. Like, I'm like, this is going in my portfolio. Yeah. I can't necessarily have. I wanted it to be Hank Hill and stuff from JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, and I'm like, yeah, I can't put this in here, but I might do that again and, like, you know, make it into like a meme soundboard, something, because like, yeah, it is true. Like, you need to like take the things that they give you and then just make something new out of it. Make it your own.
Yeah, and do something you're passionate about. Even if it doesn't see the light of day, like you're saying, maybe this is not something I put in my portfolio, but if it keeps you going because you're interested in it and you could talk about it, if it's something that you could talk about for days, make a website for that. You know, turn that into something that, you know, maybe you're not going to show it to employers, but it's going to teach you how to make a website. Do that thing.
I think that's a good thing to end with. All really good advice. I asked you for one piece and all of you just spit everything out. I think this is all really good advice for aspiring developers. So this is good. Hopefully this gives people kind of an introduction into what freeCodeCamp is, what it has to offer, and to show that just because something is free doesn't mean it's not valuable. And I think that's another thing I wanted to illustrate here. So this is good. Let's do our outros. Zach, if people want to reach out to you, where could they reach you?
If people want to reach out to me, I'm on Twitter at pressbgames. Pressbgames at Twitter. I don't really post a lot of coding stuff on there. That's just for me to, you know, nerd out with my friends, post art ideas, and, you know, sometimes talk about coding, like with personal projects that I have, and also like where I occasionally post banana comics.
Cool. I love it. For me, just go to DonTheDeveloper.tv, and you could just use the contact link there. If you want to reach out to me, you can leave a comment. I mean, at this point, I think most of you know how to reach me. How about you, Jonathan?
I'm not very active on social medias. So if you want to reach out to me, LinkedIn, you know, it's I think my handle name is Mr. J Lancaster. Or Jonathan Lancaster. Also GitHub. If you guys want to follow me on GitHub, it's Mr. J Lancaster too. Twitter is the same, Mr. J Lancaster MR, J Lancaster, but you're not going to be seeing a lot of activity on my Twitter. Yeah, other than that, that's it.
Cool. I think I remember your picture. I think you look like a superhero, Jonathan. That's one thing I noticed with your LinkedIn profile. That looks cool. How about you, Elliot?
You can reach me at Techie Elliot. I spell it ELIOT at Techie Elliot. And I'm also techieelliot.com. And I'm on LinkedIn as well. But Twitter, definitely hit me up on Twitter. I love to I have like people in Nigeria or like, I don't know, just like all over the place. Like they just message me and I'm always happy to respond. If anybody's willing to stretch their neck out and want help, you know, just DM me. I'll be glad to help you. I'm also part of several Discord servers. So look these up. It's called the Code Book Club. You could jump in there. We meet weekly on Sundays. We go through You Don't Know JavaScript Yet. And we also go through the Full Stack Open course, like I mentioned. And those are free study groups. So I leverage the free study group. I'm in there. There's several really good moderators, and we want to help you build freeCodeCamp for sure.
Okay, I like it. And what you just did, any future guests, pay attention. How you just updated your name on Zoom, like that's how you do it. That's how, like, put your handles in there. That's how you get your name out there. I like that. All right. That was good. Jonathan, I'm just going to call you out real quick. You mentioned that you don't really like talking to people. I think that's BS. I think you love talking to people. You did a really good job of it. I guess. Okay. But it was a pleasure having you on. It seems like you had a lot to say, and people really appreciated what you had to say. Okay, now that I called someone out, that's my podcast episode. So if you like this episode, you want to hear more about freeCodeCamp or self-taught paths, anything like that, let me know in the comments. But stick around for just a couple minutes afterwards. But Zach, Jonathan, Elliot, thanks so much for coming on. It was a pleasure meeting you.
It was awesome being on.
Love you guys.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. This was a pleasure.